So many different seasons that we go through in marriage. It can be rough sometimes, and what seems perfect and the fairy tale. Like I've never met a couple that on their wedding day they said, "Man, I can't wait to fight with you," and I can't wait to just cry myself to sleep because I don't know if we're going to work out or not. But we find ourselves in seasons like that sometimes. And, the passion that was once there, sometimes we just go through these valleys and it gets messy and it's cold and distant. And a lot of people lose hope. Whenever you feel like hope is lost, it makes your heart sick. It makes who you are in turmoil internally. And marriage it's a tough thing. And so through this series, we've been dealing with some of the how to deal with our differences, our incompatibilities. Our incompatibility doesn't have to lead to irreconcilable differences. And I asked a couple weeks ago that you guys would fill out. We gave a thing. If you were struggling in your marriage and you had a question about it, to write out a question. And honestly, I didn't know what to expect, but I had like 30 or 40 of these things come in. And it's not like they weren't ridiculous questions at all. It was very sobering for me as a pastor to just get a glimpse into your hurts. And the struggle is real. And I just know if that's what I received, I would say a larger percentage of marriages are probably struggling, but they're too prideful to ask anything or to get any type of help. And so I know that this is an area that a lot of people struggle with for sure. And so I'm going to end up, both experiences today are going to be completely different. I've ended up with about 15 or 16 questions, so I'm going to try to get through some of these. Some of them sounded pretty similar, so I was able to eliminate that. So if I don't get to your questions and really you ask them and you need a specific answer to that or some advice on that, just holler at me and I'll give. Here's what's going to happen today. I'm just going to give you advice, not as an expert, not as an expert at all. I struggle just like you guys do. Me and Kenzie, our marriage is perfect. Yeah, right. It's a perfect mess at times, and that's just the way that marriage goes. And so I really want to speak to this, and if it's really hard to kind of get people's intentions, I guess, really with what they write down, but I'm going to try the best that I can. And so I went ahead and typed them out, just word for word, everything that you guys wrote. I put them in here like this. The first question was, what do you do when you just don't get what your wife keeps asking you not to do? I kind of relate to this guy. What do you do whenever you just don't get it? Like, apparently his wife's asking him not to do things, but I don't know if it's lost in translation somewhere. And he says, you try, but you fail over and over, and you're always feeling like you're letting them down. So what happens a lot of times, I really believe, is that whenever the quarrels come into a marriage and the strife comes in and the differences come in, both people really, more times than not, start shutting different components of their soul down towards the other person. Yes, we are different. Yes, women, I'm not even pretending like to be anywhere close to expert on women. God created them. He's the only one that can figure them out. The communication breakdown that happens between a woman and a man is usually vast. But here's what my advice to this situation would be. If you care that much, and it sounds like you say, I just fell over and over and over again, I would say you need to sit down together. Not in a hostile environment. I would put a time limit on the conversation. I'd say, hey, can we talk to each other? Can we just talk to each other and lay out some ground rules? Sometimes you got to lay out ground rules and say, all right, I want to speak 30 minutes from the heart. Neither one of us are allowed to raise our voices. I need you, if you're this guy, I would sit there and ask my wife, I need you, honey, to specifically tell me. I know I'm making you mad. It's obvious. I can tell by my clothes in the yard. I can see that you're visibly upset. But can you please explain to me on Barney terms that, ladies, listen, your guy's not that smart, all right? He's just not. Can you please explain to me on what I'm doing to really upset you? What is it that I'm doing? And you know what the woman that would hear on the backside of this question right now, her immediate response, ladies, would be, I've already told you. I've already told you 1,000,000 times. All right, so that's what I'm saying. That's why we're going to lay out ground rules for this next conversation, right? And understand, you've probably told him 1,000,000 times. You probably have. I'll high-five you in your little corner and make you feel better. But you need to explain it one more time. And really, not just what I don't want you to do. What are the expectations that you guys have for each other in a marriage? You cannot, one of the greatest problems that I see is that people get mad at each other because the other person didn't meet their expectations. Well, the expectations really have never been communicated with each other well. And a lot of people really feel this way. Whenever you're in a relationship, you feel like the other person should care, that they do care just as much as you do. That part's probably true, but listen, it's false to believe that they care about the exact same things that you care about. They love you. This person's obviously like, I can't seem to do anything right. I fell over and over. They love you. Please state the clear expectations. And so if that applies to you, I hope you use it. If you're the guy that wrote that, you can go 1,000,000 different routes, but that's really kind of the best advice I got. There's no perfect formula, solution, or answer to any marriage. Jesus is the answer to life, period, and that includes your marriage. Right. And so you've got to keep that in the forefront of your mind. This next question says, forgiveness is important in marriage. I would agree with that. But when does it have its limits? Especially with a spouse's toxic behaviors that can affect your children. Okay, they're recognizing that forgiveness is important. That's good. You're on the right track. But when does it have its limits? Let me tell you something. Just to answer that question alone, forgiveness has no limits. It really doesn't. I thank God that his forgiveness doesn't have any limits on my life. And we should love our spouses the way that Christ loves us, loves his church. And so, but you're talking about your spouse's behavior, toxic behaviors. They didn't say are affecting the kids, can start affecting the kids. Well, I would discuss those behaviors. I kind of read between the lines on a lot of these messages. A lot of people are, honestly, these are really hard to answer because I feel like a lot of people are just looking for a way out and a validation to get out. And it's just not, you're not going to get it from me. You're just not. Behaviors can be adjusted. If I don't know what toxic behaviors are. I would say a toxic behavior would be putting limitations on your amount of forgiveness you're going to give. That's toxic. I would also state that there's a lot of things that could fall under the umbrella of toxic. Abuse, is that going on? I don't know what the toxic behaviors are, but I would sit down with my spouse if I really felt like, my wife's behaviors, this has never happened, like my wife's behaviors were detrimental and affecting our kids in such a negative way, it was going to scar them. I would probably say, honey, I need you to have a talk with you. Discuss this out. If it's something that you're fearful to do, I think it's really good to have a third party involved that you both mutually respect. Listen, here's who the third party won't be. Either one of you all stinking parents. You bring your parents into any fight, you're just advance that fight 1,000,000 miles. Just don't do it. But bring somebody in that's neutral and that really does love you and cares about the situation. Not saying that your parents don't care, but it's hard to be neutral sometimes. And so it's hard not to feel attacked. And so get somebody involved with it. If it needs to be a pastor, come ask. Pastors sometimes they have different roles. Yeah, we can marry you, bury you, and occasionally referee the fights. You need to be in a safe environment to where these things can be discussed, because if there's the love there, and listen, if the love's lost, then figure out how to get the love back. All right, that's as simple as I can tell you. You had it at one point. You made a commitment. Stick with your commitments. Don't you think that's like the biggest issue, overriding issue facing the world today, is nobody sticks with their commitments? Period. I mean, you look at all the violence going on in the world. It's crazy. A lot of it is because deadbeat dads didn't want to stick to the commitment. They just wanted to be a sperm donor and move on. So you have a fatherless generation. It's all about commitments. We don't have people holding on to jobs anymore. It's really rare to find a younger generation sticking with a job for like 10 to 20 years. And then the older generations, they've had the same job since they were 14. And it was a crappy job when they started. They just toughed it out and figured out a way to get to the top. And so just the commitment part of it, I say don't give up on the commitment. Now, if there is, I am not condoning any type of behavior at all. If there is, there was no abuse spoken about in this question, so I don't know. A lot of times what can happen is, well, I'll just label my spouse's behavior as toxic, make it sound bad, and it could be just as simple as the sucker don't put the toilet seat down, you know what I'm saying? And you're looking for a way out, and so you're not getting out on this question. And so, anyways, I hope that helps. Some of these questions are they'll progressively, I think, get a little stranger. Sometimes. I like this question. This next one, I've kind of combined two together here, and I'll show you why. It says, how do I handle my husband's very real struggle with his faith? I'm faced to be the family prayer and Bible reader because of this struggle. So that's a question, and I should probably address this one individually right here. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to lump the other one in a moment. Listen, I had a faith struggle for years. Years. My wife was the one that prayed. She was the one that read the Bible. She was the one reading the Bible. Like, I would read like little Bible stories, especially when Kendall was a baby and stuff, but it was my wife that was in the Word. And I was struggling. I was having an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I knew about God. I didn't know who He was. I was in a very real struggle. And here's what I would say to you, ma'am. Don't give up. Because do you think Kinsey knew 12 years ago that the husband that she had prayed for every day would one day be leading thousands of people to Christ? You don't know what's on the other side of your prayers. You petition heaven, heaven moves on your behalf, and it's just like that last song that we sang today. I love it. It opens up by saying, you know what? I figured by now these walls would have failed. The struggle would have been over with. I get it. Sometimes that doesn't happen. But the only way to assure the outcome that you are to affect the outcome that you're desiring in a negative way is to give up. Don't give up. I would just say, thank God that He is represented in your home. If it's got to be you carrying that torch right now, so be it. So be it. Thank God that your kids are getting raised with the Word of God in the home. Thank God that your husband's struggling with his faith. Because let me tell you something. God's big enough to handle your husband's fight. He'll handle it. You don't give up. Period. The end. You just can't. I understand it's your desire that He'll one day lead. That's the confidence that you got to have. That's the faith you got to have. It's the evidence of things that you can't see yet. Don't lose hope because of it. I put this question or this thing in with it because I'm wondering if If a wife didn't write that one, and then the husband, I got two of them, I thought, man, these two sound like they're married. This one says, my wife and I get along great. My question is, why do I have more struggles with my faith and God than I do with my wife? I can reconcile my differences with her easier than I can with him. What I love about that question is he's recognizing it and saying that I have struggles with faith. But obviously, to write this question, you're in church. As it refers to God, calls him, he capitalizes it. He puts a weight on it. Guys, listen, I know exactly what it's like to just not want to commit to something if it's not real. This was the wrestling that I had with God. Just wasn't for lack of reading my Bible. I'd read that thing cover to cover. I knew more scriptures and it was all worthless to me. It wasn't real. And I'm glad, first of all, I'm thankful that you and your wife have a great relationship. Don't ever take that for granted. Always feed it. But let me tell you something. I believe everything is better with Jesus in the middle of it. It just really is. And if you could ever grasp that, you say, you can believe that you can reconcile things with your wife easier than you can with Jesus. Well, that indicates like something that I used to be really messed up a lot on was believing that I couldn't be reconciled either because I'd done too much. And can I just tell you something? That's nowhere close to the truth at all. He desires to have you close to him. He desires to forgive you of your sins. He desires for you to have a full and vibrant life, living a life with a purpose that will go long beyond your years. Everything else that you're living for right now, it's only temporary. It's for this life, even if it is your marriage. You know what? Guess what? You're not going to be married in heaven. I know we would love to think that. It would be awesome. But me and my wife won't be married in heaven. We all have to stand before God on our own. I hope she at least lives on my street. You know what I'm saying? Brings me a pie every now and then or something. But everything that you fight for in this lifetime, it is temporary. Keep up the good fight. But a man needs a fight. They need a battle, a struggle to go out and fight for and to win. And it's usually provision, protection. These are the things that we are hardwired to do. But there's a desire, something that's missing in every man's soul that still isn't fulfilled even whenever we do those things. It's because it's a legacy. It's a yearning for heaven. Like, hey, I don't belong here. There's something different about me. I can't put the pieces of the puzzle together, but that's the cry of heaven that's missing from your soul. And it's all that drive that God has, when he created you, put in you to provide, to protect, to do all these things. He also put that in there for you to go out and win his kingdom too. Advance his kingdom. We were created for this, man. And without that, look, I understand that the struggle is absolutely real. Here's my only advice to you. Keep struggling. Keep struggling. Just at least commit to the struggle. If you can't commit to God, commit to struggling with God for however long it takes. I love Jacob, he wrestled with God. He said, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. Got his hip broke. But he didn't let go. There's something commendable about guys that won't give up. That's the most attractive quality on any man in my eyes, like the most respectable quality. Guys that just won't give up, especially when hell's breaking loose in your life. Anyways, God wants to reconcile. And thank God. Hey, go home and kiss your wife. Yeah, it sounds like you got a great marriage. Go for it. Take her on a date tonight. The next question. This is a big one. It's a long one. It says, God is number one priority, and I understand that. But I just want to be a priority somewhere on that list. Instead, I feel like I'm always on the back burner. I feel like I'm unimportant, uncared for, and taken for granted. How do I get past wanting to leave? Not to seek someone better, but to not feel worthless. I feel if I was out of the marriage, I would not feel so down about myself, and my attitude on life would be completely different. Help! Exclamation point, exclamation point. All caps, help. I pray, pray, pray. But yet I feel like each day I'm giving up more and more. And because of that, it's hard for me to want to be the wife that I'm supposed to be. P.S. She puts, side note actually, dash, my husband's the most hard-headed person that I've ever met. Here's what I'd say to you, honey. It sounds like he's in great company. You know? Because that's one of the most hard-headed things I've ever read too. Just, I'm sorry. I don't want to offend you, but maybe you should be offended. Maybe I'll piss you off to the point that you want to do something about it. I get it. You pray and you pray and you pray, but to sit there and say, like, how do I get past wanting to leave? I understand that part, but every day you give up more and more. And yes, I get it. Your husband's, I've never met a man that wasn't hard-headed. But listen, this is a two-way street. If you're mentally already checking out, and you're saying you're checking out a little more day after day after day, do you think that type of attitude in that marriage is a reconciling attitude? No, listen. It's such a commitment that if you love your spouse that much, I'll just give you a great example that's went on in our marriage. A rough season once, or 1,000 times, or whatever. And we'd fought, and we fought, and we fought for so long. And then it was just crazy. Like, one day I wake up and dang, Kenzie had made me a cup of coffee. She'd got up before me, which is odd. She made me a cup of coffee, and she goes, hey, I just want you to know I love you. Have a great day at work. She goes, are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Was there anything I can be praying for you about? I got it. I'll walk out the door. Come home late. Go to bed, whatever. I wake up the next morning. Guess what? She brings me a cup of coffee. She goes, hey, before you go to work, I just want you to know that I love you. And is there anything, how are you doing? Is there anything you want to talk about? I'm good. Anything I can be praying about for you? I'm the pastor, right? No, good. I'll walk out. And this starts happening more and more, like every day. And let me tell you something. After about a week of that, I'm just like, there is no way in the world I could. Why was I ever mad at this woman? I've got it great. Whenever one person does something wrong, it's inevitable. The Bible says it's impossible that no offenses should come your way. That includes coming from your spouse. It's how do we respond to that? If your husband's hard-headed, let me tell you something. You want to soften his heart just as fast as you possibly can? Love him, serve him. Be the wife that treat him exactly how you want him to treat you. And my heart breaks for this person because this is the story of so many people's lives. This is the point This is the question that if you don't answer this one correctly, you'll end up in divorce. This is the one that just unnecessarily, might I add. You got two knuckleheads, two hard-headed people that deeply love each other, deep down, but you're two gigantic buttholes that won't sit down and talk about it. And listen, I'm always on the back burner, unimportant, uncared for, and taken for granted. Listen, I've said this a few weeks ago. Listen, if you put the weight of your worship and your worth on your husband, he'll fail you every time. You've got to get your worth and your value from Jesus Christ alone. Your spouse is your partner, not your project. And these two, whoever these people are, they just need to come together. And like they're missing the bullseye by that much. They're almost there. But they feel like that far might as well be a million miles. And it's just not true. It's not true. So I would just say to you, ma'am, if you're watching online or if you're in this room, or maybe it's going to be somebody in this second experience. I don't know. They'll have to watch it online. If you want to find out when I'm going to say second experience, you got to go online and watch it. But what I would say is just don't give up. Just don't. Anyways. Next one is, how can I help my wife deal with depression? Okay. I don't know how you help your wife deal with depression, but here's what I know is I struggle with depression. There was one, the darkest season of my life, I've went through a couple of them, but the darkest season of my life happened about like four and a half years ago. Guys, it was bad, like having thoughts and getting ready to do things that I would have regretted and hurt generations to come. So I can't tell you what to say to your wife, but I'll tell you what my wife did for me to help me out of it. Listen, you are not your spouse's functional savior. Depression is a disease. Mentally, you need to support them in however you can, getting them professional help. Professional help. There's a lot of whack job psychiatrists out there and stuff, but there's some very great ones too. And sometimes it is literally a chemical imbalance. I think you just need to go explore the options with a medical professional. Because sometimes there's a difference between being in a bad mood for like 3 weeks in a row and being depressed. It's a very different thing. And look, don't give up on your spouse. They're sick. If she was sick in any other way, you would take her to a doctor. And that would be my advice here. I would go into a counselor that is a Christian, that's going to apply biblical principles. Here's why we don't I'll do counseling here with people every now and then. Pastoral care will do counseling. But listen, I even encourage them. No, like 1, maybe 2 meetings. And if it's not fixed by then, like we're not professionals in counseling. Like we're just not, especially whenever it comes to things like depression. There are professionals out there, and listen to me, brilliant. I don't know where I would be. I hated my therapist for about the first 2 months. I wanted to punch this guy in his beady little face every time I saw him. But if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be right now. He really helped me out. And listen, spent well over $10,000 on therapy over the years. But let me tell you something. If my kid was sick and it was going to cost him $10,000 to get well, I would do whatever it takes. So I wouldn't make money an issue. You just do whatever it takes. There's people out there that can help you. So that's what I'd say to help your wife deal with depression. Let her know that she's not alone, and you don't have to say that to her. Listen, whenever being depressed for me was like being in a very dark room with the rest of the world behind a closed door that I couldn't see. Like I would just live life in this dark room mentally in my mind. I didn't need anybody. How do you feel support? I would just say hold their hand in the dark, because they're in the dark. That's how you can support them. Don't try to fix them. Let them know that they're not alone, because in the throes of depression, that's the overwhelming feeling, is that you're alone. And so if this is your spouse, just hold their hand. That's as simple as it is. Just hold their hand. Okay, next question. Starts listing off things. Verbal abuse. My husband rages, is hypercritical, calls me names, and gets offended over minor things. I'm broken, and I want to leave, but I don't know if I biblically should. So sounds like your husband is just a jerk. Yeah, there might not be the physical abuse, but can I just tell you something? The verbal can be just as bad. Are you one of those tough guys that just screams and yells at the top of your head, punches holes in the walls? You're a child. Listen, grow up. Stop it. Should you leave biblically? No. No, but your husband needs help. And here's the way that I could help him right now. Actually, I've got some friends that would help. And so I would like to give him a one-night free admission to train with some of my friends over at the Joplin Brotherhood MMA thing. And I'm going to tell all of them that this guy belittles his wife and throws fits like children and all this kind of stuff. And listen, we won't even charge him to kick his butt. It'll just be free of charge, and it'll be awesome. And I won't do it because that would look bad if I'm in the paper again about something crazy. But I will film this. I'll film it, and I'll put it up on YouTube, and it'll be great. I'm just the type. Listen, I'm just the guy that believes that somewhere in every man's life he should have the crap kicked out of him. Because believe it or not, I don't get all political, but there is a food chain, and you're not at the top of it. All right? There's always somebody out there bigger and badder, and if you have to sit there and throw this kind of hatred and intimidation at your wife, that doesn't make you tough. It makes you a coward. But you're not beyond repair. Listen, I was that guy, all right? I was a lot of things. I remember standing over my wife. She's pregnant with Kendall. I'm sorry, Kendall. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but begging me not to leave. And I'm sitting there, and she's curled up in a ball crying in front of the door. I'm screaming and yelling at her. I slam my hand against the wall, and I walk out anyways. Your husband's not beyond reach. Dude, if this is you, you're not beyond reach. But you better get some ballsy men in your life that will hold your feet to the flame and accountable and start being a stinking man. And if you miss Fight Club that's coming up here at the beginning of next year, shame on you. Just don't. Just don't. Because men can handle men. Men are like thermoses, man. They need to be slung around. They can handle it. They can handle it. You do that to a woman, like, you know, the way I would handle you as a man compared to a woman is vastly different. Women are like fine china. Listen, they will break. They will break emotionally. They'll break mentally. You'll break their spirit. This woman's broken. So I don't know if this husband even attends here, but I pray that this message for every man watching online understands if you're this way, stop right now. Apologize, repent of your sins, and get some good godly men in your life. I'll almost guarantee that every one of your friends are pathetic mama's boys. Or if you do have some real men in your life, you're so fake that you won't even let them know what you struggle with. I think this is good stuff. I just sat there and thought about what I just said. I thought, man, that was brilliant. But you guys can keep being quiet if you want. And the last question, I'm out of time, but this is fun. Last question I had for this experience. Is it possible for a man to feel like the leader/provider in his home if his wife makes more money? There's a lot of different ways I'd go with this. It could be for a number of reasons. But I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm like, dude, go you. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if there's kids involved. You know, I don't know what your home life looks like. I would just say it sounds like, and there's a similar kind of question, gets way more in depth in the next experience I'm going to tackle having to do with this. But listen, women are not inferior. They're not. They're they're just as talented as we are, more talented than we are. We're like monkeys, apes, running around like, fix it with duct tape. And they actually use brains sometimes. And so sometimes that leads to great paying jobs. That's awesome. Don't feel bad if you married a smart woman. Who does that make you? A very smart man. But that shouldn't give up this shouldn't be a struggle for masculinity at all. It shouldn't be a struggle for leadership within the home. I'm not going to stop my wife if she wants to make $1 million. Heck no. I'll still pray with the family every day. I'll still bring home what I need to bring home. And if me and my wife are in agreement with that, and her responsibility, her primary responsibility in the home, besides making sure I don't hurt myself, is taking care of our children and keeping our home. And she does a beautiful job of that. She homeschools all of our kids. Does a great job of that. That's just our life. That's what we sat down and decided as partners, this is the way that we're going to handle our home. How are you handling your home? You have a say. You are the man of the house. You will answer to God about the way that you led your wife and your kids. That's on you. Money shouldn't factor into this. It just shouldn't. And here's what I'm not for. Personally, this is personal preference, and I know that this is a different generation that's sensitive, and y'all have your safe spaces and all this bull crap. But I don't believe that the woman should be the sole provider for the home. Unless your man has an injury and physically can't work. If you're a man and you're just letting the woman carry all the weight of providing, you just handed one of your 2 testicles to her. And you need to get it back. You need to get a job. But if that's what you all sat down and agreed about, and you both are bringing in, and you listen, you're providing. There's a desire in every man to provide. And if you're at home covered in Cheeto dust, you're really selling yourself short as a man. So I hope that makes sense. So, but man, if she has a great job and you both have jobs and make money, just go. It sounds like you're getting a new boat soon or something. It's awesome. Anyways, I love you guys. Let me close out in prayer.